Thanks for tuning in to another Tax Syndicate production. In this video, Mike Leckliter of the Corona Fire Dept gives a comprehensive review of the capabilities in the ATAK UAS-Tool plugin.
Hi, my name is Michael Leckliter with the Corona Fire Dept. Welcome to my presentation. We're going to be talking about the integration of UAS and ATAK for enhanced operations, the Corona Fire Department's innovative approach. So first, I'd like to give you a little bit of the background on the Corona Fire Department in the city of Corona. So Corona is located in Southern California, approximately 50 miles southeast of LA. We span an area of around 39.2 square miles and have approximately 160,000 residents. The Corona Fire Department serves the community with 7 fire stations. We have 6 fire engines, 2 trucks, and 1 squad. We also cross-staff 2 brush engines, 1 hazmat, 1 USAR, 2 swift water boats, a UTV, and we have additional fire apparatus provided by the state of California for mutual aid. The Corona Fire Department runs approximately 13,000 calls for service each year. So the Corona Fire Department's ATAK vision. Little history on ATAK with us. Andreas Johansson, a captain here at the Corona Fire Department, was introduced to ATAK during an incident management team deployment to the campfire in 2018. He was able to see geospatial video from the MQ-9 flying overhead right on an Android tablet. He brought ATAK back, where we both realized the value of this tool. We discussed it with our leadership, and they gave us the reins to make change. They allowed us to roll out a department-wide ATAK deployment. This endeavor was complete with a full abandonment of an iOS environment that our department had grown used to, and we replaced all of our engine phones with Samsung S10s, and we put Galaxy S4 tablets on every fire apparatus. In that same year, we launched our UAS program. Our leadership saw that ATAK and UAS, each on their own accord, were in alignment with the fire department's mission. It was a tool that could help prevent or minimize the loss of life, damage to the environment, and the loss of property from the adverse effects of fire, medical emergencies, and hazardous conditions. I mean, it essentially is right there in the Corona Fire Department's mission statement. So we'll talk a little bit about UAS first. Talk about how UAS fits into modern firefighting. I think the roles of the UAS are really to perform tasks to increase our situational awareness. Primary roles of the UAS, I think first is Recon. It's simply to gather area intelligence. Maybe it's a ground assessment where we are able to provide a quick overview of the area. We can identify potential hazards and safe zones, and we can do this all before deploying our first ground units. Another area where it really becomes valuable for the agency is search and rescue. So we're able to do quick area scans much faster than ground personnel can. It provides the ability to survey large areas. We can pinpoint locations of individuals in distress. And the other advantage that it gives us versus ground search and rescue is that we can change our viewpoints at any point, from nadir to oblique, different aspects of a target point. And it gives us the ability to search for night operations. Most of UAS these days are equipped with infrared sensors, or they have spotlights. They can operate in low light conditions, and they basically aid in search operations that extend into the night, where most on the ground search operations, most of the time agencies will call it off at night, or they just become almost ineffective. They also have the ability to do relayed communication. We can really extend the reach over areas where terrain makes communication difficult or infrastructure is damaged. UAS can act as communication relays. There are UAS out there that have the ability to carry significant payloads, and on those payloads they can carry either mobile repeaters or mesh network repeaters. The other way they relay communications is you can really break it down to, like, we call it an audio visual aspect. So a lot of these UAS now have loudspeakers on them, and when you combine a loudspeaker with a visual camera, you can kind of create this rudimentary communication system where you can give instructions that say, hey, we're on our way to help you. If you're not hurt, go ahead, raise your hand up, and we can kind of communicate, create that two-way communication. And so it really gives us this enhanced situational awareness. And one of the ways we do that is during an incident is Overwatch. So it gives us this tactical oversight. UAS can hover above an operation. We can ensure all teams are functioning properly, and we can basically spot any emerging threats or challenges. It also gives us protection for our ground units. By keeping that watch above, the UAS or UAS operators, we can alert ground units about imminent dangers, such as a fire made a sudden change in direction. Then we talked a little bit about it in the search and rescue, but we bring in that aerial thermography, and it really gives us the ability to see what the human eye can't. Such as like hotspot identification. With these thermal cameras, these UAS can identify hotspots that may be invisible to the naked eye. This really aids in ensuring that fires are completely extinguished and helps prevent reignition. So let's talk a little bit about the Corona Fire Department's UAS fleet. So these are the actual craft that we are using today. On our left side here, we have our what we call our NWCG Class 4 rotor wing. We use the Mavic 2 Enterprise. We do have a mix of the Dual, which is the thermal model, and the Zoom, which has a little bit of a mechanical zoom on it. Now, what we found is these small aircraft, they are really good at getting us some very quick, very basic intel, but we have noticed that they give us about 15 to 20 minutes of flight time per battery charge. And that, like I said, that's great for that quick recon, get out, get some basic intel so we know what we need to do. But on the flip side, these smaller aircraft, because they are smaller, we're kind of limited on what the payloads are. They're, like I said, they're basic situational awareness camera payloads. The infrared that's on these are fairly low quality because it is packed into a small frame there, and even the EO quality gives us about a 6 times zoom. Now, we found that when we're running our ground station, we use the Triple Tech 9 Pro tablet as our ground station. A lot of people are very familiar, we have the little smart controllers, or most, the drones have the built-in screens on those controllers. And one of the faults that we have noticed is that most of those controllers don't have enough of the horsepower under the hood to even run TAC. They're maybe 1 or 2 gigabytes of RAM and a very slow processor on it. So we found that we needed a separate tablet. So what we found with this Triple Tech is that one of the advantages of it is that it's actually technically a phone tablet, or we call them a phablet. And the fact that it takes a SIM card, you can put a SIM card in it. One of the advantages of this Pro 9 version is it is band 14 capable, so you can put a FirstNet SIM in there, and run. A lot of these agencies out here are running on FirstNet. But other than just the band 14, it truly has like a vast variety of bands that it's capable of. So you can essentially bring whatever provider you want, and it's going to work with it. Other advantages that we've found with this is that it really has the work capacity behind it. They built this thing for heavy use. It has a dedicated GPU in it. It has 12 gigabytes of RAM, and the screen has 1,300 nits of brightness. And anyone that's flown a drone knows that when you go out into the daylight, most screens are impossible to see. And this one, I can tell from experience that even on the brightest day, you're going to see clearly what's going on. It brings us over to our other side of the screen. So this is our NWCG Class 3 rotor wing. We use the M300. We found that this gives us about 30 to 45 minutes of flight, depending on our payload. We have found that it has an extremely capable camera payload on it. We are utilizing the H20N. This is a thermal camera. It's got EO with zoom. It's got night vision in it. So like the EO, it gives us 120 times zoom on the EO camera. We can zoom up to 32 times on the infrared. It does have a starlight lens, which if you've never seen it, under low light, dark conditions, it lights up like you're just right around twilight. So it really helps during low light. And it has a laser rangefinder, which really helps project distances from the drone, be able to find coordinates, waypoints. And as far as the ground control station with this, we decided to go with the RC Plus. It originally came with the Smart Controller Enterprise, which has the same problems I was discussing earlier. It just did not have enough RAM or ability to run, and would essentially crash anytime ATAK was running. So this new RC Plus absolutely has enough horsepower to run ATAK. We've been running ATAK, UAS-Tools, all that with it, no problem. So we've talked a little bit how we were interested in ATAK. We've talked a little bit about our UAS. Now, we basically found that there was this synergy between ATAK and the UAS. And that synergy really kind of came with the real-time geospatial video. ATAK brought this geospatial awareness to our crews. You know, by itself, the UAS brought valuable data to the pilot, or anyone standing over their shoulder. And often this would be actionable intelligence, but because of its isolation from the rest of the system, usually it would just become a hindrance. Drones were kind of seen as like, oh yeah, we got one up, but yeah, it's kind of not doing anything for us. When actions were taken to kind of share that information, more often than not, it had to be relayed over voice. Like, hey, I see something over there. It's at your 3 o'clock, or at your left. No, your other left. I don't know, like just over the ridge. It really gave our crews a hard time trying to really comprehend what was being said to them. And the only other way was to have someone in leadership gather around a remote control screen. And anyone that's a pilot that's had 4 or 5 people trying to look over your shoulder, it's not really conducive to your flying your mission. We found that by the time this intelligence was shared, it was often old news, or like I said, it was too difficult to comprehend over voice. And ultimately, UAS ops just kind of were kind of disregarded or thought of as like a hindrance or a burden. But once we blended them together, I can say that it brought that life-saving, game-changing awareness to our forces. Our boots on the ground and at the incident command had a new level of intelligence available to them that pretty much was only seen in movies at the time. We can kind of break that down. So we had like our precision and tactical operations. We were able now to share tactical markers, routes, or points of interest. We were able to set them in ATAK based on live footage from the UAS. This gave us precise targeting or identification of areas of concern. We found that this aerial video provided context to the ground units. It enabled them to align their operation with the real-time changes in the field. We found that this gave us efficient resource allocation. Our commanders were able to use ATAK to allocate resources, set their waypoints, direct teams, all based on our live UAS video. Found that real-time aerial visuals ensured that the resources are dispatched to the exact locations without the usual guesswork or reliance on outdated information. It also brought us some safety and risk mitigation. This UAS footage, when overlaid on ATAK, it identified those potential threats or hazard zones, and we're able to alert our units to either avoid them or approach these areas with caution. The combination enables real-time escape routes to be mapped in emergencies based on the current situation we see on the ground. So in essence, the integration of ATAK's robust geospatial platform with the dynamic real-time video capabilities of UAS, it created a synergy that really drives operational efficiency, safety, and that tactical precision to like unparalleled levels. This combination is particularly invaluable in environments where rapid, informed decisions can be the difference between success and failure with unforeseen challenges. So a little bit about like the workhorse behind that is that network video, that real-time intel. So in order to share that video, you have to be able to push it over network. We primarily use LTE as our network, but we have also been able to test out and utilize some MANET radios, some peer-to-peer networks, and even ISM mesh radios as a way to share data. What this added value that ATAK and UAS-Tools together has brought, it really forced us to evaluate our priority for obtaining a reliable network in the field. So why is it important to have a network that can support video streaming? It's instant situational awareness. It's that enhanced safety for your responders, that efficient resource allocation. And ultimately, what it comes down to is it helps you to make the enhanced tactical decision making. You need that real-time data to make those quick decisions. Rapid access to real-time visual. It's really important to make those accurate, intelligent decisions. This enables uninterrupted oversight of the developing situations, and it really lets you ensure that any changes can be addressed promptly. One of the other advantages, especially if you have a video server and you're running on ATAK server, is these real-time videos can later be used for training purposes or to review or enhance operational tactics. So we'll talk a little bit about the ATAK UAS primary role, which the primary role we use it for is basic incident recon. And it's constantly running this loop of data. I think so. We'll start off with that real-time aerial footage. Obviously, the ability to quickly gather that visual of an incident without the need for manned aircraft is huge, especially when we talked about being able to change your perspective, nadir, oblique. You can really visualize the overall incident magnitude. We then have the ability from that to do geospatial tagging. When we combine our UAS visuals with ATAK's mapping we can map pinpoint exact locations of interest, hazards, or hotspots. What this does is it gives us the ability to get that 360-degree scene assessment. We get that comprehensive view. We get that holistic understanding of the incident scope and scale. Historically, without it, we talked about getting a 360, and that 360 is not complete till you literally see all sides of an incident, at which when you're sending a person on the ground, it may take a while. It may be something that's not done until later in the incident, and you can essentially miss critical, valuable information. I think with that, when we're tied to ATAK, we have that immediate data sharing. So we're constantly receiving real-time footage data. We're getting that collaborative decision making, and then we have the ability to share it back and forth. So as things change or something is noticed on the ground, on the screen, those points can be shared, information can be shared directly through TAC, and everyone sees it all at once. Then we have our ability to bring sensor payloads. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but when we bring thermal or infrared sensors, there's that critical information even in the low light scenarios. But we also have the ability, we can hook up and bring in chemical sensors. There's now chemical sensors that feed directly into TAC. There's not any limit other than what you can imagine or what you can bring in. Even something as simple as a spotlight, bringing in a spotlight payload, being able to light up an area of the scene that has poor lighting, poor visuals can make a world of difference. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to demonstrate for you guys a little bit of a video we put together. So this comes from a prescribed burn that was performed up in the hills behind the city of Corona. We put this on as a way to kind of show our senior leadership and adjoining forces what UAS and ATAC can do. Before we went on this operation, we did download an AVL feed from the vehicles of our adjoining agencies, and we put in pre-plan areas. We put in the polygons of where the burn areas were. And this is going to be no different than that most of our first responders would have. If you're going to a planned mission, you're going to a wildland fire where it's an extended mission, you're going to have some pre-plans already able to pull in. All right. So we'll kind of note there on this prescribed fire, what you're going to notice, all of these screenshots here are from the observer view. So this is actually the personnel on the ground. This is what they are seeing. So you're going to notice that you're going to kind of cycle through with the capabilities of the UAS from, being able to cut through the smoke and see heat, being able to overlay what they call the MSX, which is the visual and thermal on top of each other. Now what we did is we gave an ATAC device to the lead firing crew operator. So that device that you see there, that's literally a fire personnel out there with a drip torch lighting the weeds on fire for this controlled burn. Now, what this really allows us to do is, as you zoom in, you'll start to see people on the ground, and it kind of gives a good representation to our command, like who those people are, where your crews are at all times. I mean, I think as a whole in public service, we're really good at tracking where our apparatus are, but once you leave the apparatus, who knows where you are. And with this, you can see even when we switch it into a thermal view where we lose that visual acuity, the augmented reality kicks in and still shows us where our ground crews are in relation to this thermal image of the fire. And you can see as he's down there, he's dripping some fire on the weeds. So as he's moving, you're going to see that fire kind of grow a little bit. But at all times, we have accountability of where he is. And this kind of shows, so there's that AVL resource at the bottom where it says EGP. So that is their unit. We are kind of limited to the feed. So on this particular unit, it is backhauled through satellite, and it only updates every couple minutes. So as they move, we're not going to see them, but if they stay stationary, we'll. And that's going to be really the limitation of your system. This will kind of show a little bit about perimeter mapping. This is one of the ways you can do it. So you can actually set a breadcrumb based on the SPI of the drone or the sensor point of interest, and instruct your UAS operator to essentially trace the fire. So you're going to see that SPI kind of the crosshair trace the perimeter of a fire and drop a breadcrumb where you can later then draw and connect the dots for some intel. Another way you can do it is we can do a live fire map. So you can take that live imagery through UAS tools and actually drop it on the map so it lines up. It's geo-rectified, at which point if you've got a fire like this, you can take something like a fire area survey tool or even your drawing tools and essentially trace what you see to be the perimeter of a fire in order to get that valuable intel information that's needed, like what's its perimeter, what is the acreage of this fire. So you're going to see as he proceeds to kind of map this around, he's going to close up this polygon here. Now this is an older version of Fire Area Survey. The newer version is actually a lot cleaner. And if you're on the fire service, go look that up. So you can see he's going to go ahead and close this polygon, and it's going to give him his basic stats: 1.21 acres and just under 900 feet around. And as we finish this up, I just want to show, this is kind of a show off of that augmented reality. So whatever iconology you bring in, like you'll notice that it follows along in the augmented reality. So you have the standard ICP icon, you have the markers and labels. So it's kind of nice to be able to see all that. So the next demonstration I have for you guys is for a remote area rescue. So the fire department UAS and ATAK were used in a scenario with a victim in an off-road remote area. We were given the objectives to utilize the UAS to locate the victim and then guide in rescuing teams. So this is where the mission starts. You'll see the BC there. Now, as the UAS takes off, we're kind of going under the assumption, like most rescues, that we have at least a general idea of where a victim is, whether it be from coordinates coming in off the cell phone ping or something simple as, hey, I was off of this road about a mile in this area. So as the UAS operator flies that area, they locate what potentially may be a victim. They see something. They're going to be able to manipulate the camera payloads right from within UAS tools. Now, this is the view for the ground crew. So this is that the ground troops are watching this in real time, seeing what the drone is spotting, kind of getting that idea of like, okay, I have a good fix. So back to the operator, one of the things they can do is they can single tap a button on the controller where it will drop a point of interest, which they can then share out to the rescue team, the command, anyone that's on the TAC server. So in the process of sending that over, you're going to see this switch back to the ground crew. So the ground crew's there. They now have that point of interest that was dropped. They're starting to make access over to it, and you can kind of see their point as it starts to be on the move. and they're just trying to be, the UAS is essentially guiding them in. You can see that operator view in their augmented reality. They can see that rescue crew as they approach the victim. They could be giving them instructions, hey, if you don't see them, they're right over that ridge. And they're going to continue to be that overwatch during the incident. Now, in this scenario, we gave them an instance where they made contact with the victim, and the victim says, hey, I have one more person in my party that's on the next ridge over. They weren't able to walk. So the rescue crew is able to kind of visualize, project out a point of interest or where that victim may be. They're going to go ahead and relabel it appropriately. That's kind of important, is make sure your labels are appropriate. And they are going to then send that point of interest back to the UAS operator, and allow the UAS operator to go make initial visual contact. So you'll see on the operator view, you'll notice that the pin's going to drop on the map, and you'll see it in the augmented reality. So it was just shared. Now they're going to go ahead and take off, try to establish visual contact again, so they can kind of repeat the process of getting the rescuers in. So now as they fly, they get to the point and they realize that I don't see a victim here. So they're going to be relaying back to the rescue crew who has the original victim and say, hey, utilize them to help maybe see what's on your screen and look around. So we actually can give gimbal control to the observer on the ground, and he's able to drag the SPI from the UAS, and the UAS will actually move and follow wherever he's looking. So you'll notice it's going to kind of jump around. There's a little bit of lag in the video based on this area was pretty cellular denied. We had very little connectivity, but it maintained quality. It just added a little bit of lag in the video. So they're able to kind of search around with the victim, and this is what the operator is seeing as they go. So there's the confirmation that they've asked for gimbal control, so they've given them permission. At any time, they can revoke that permission by selecting that little highlighted green gimbal icon in the upper left. They still have full flight controls and full primary override controls. So as they're moving, so you'll notice like as it's moving on the operator side, it's instant. There's no video lag. So then after they move to this last point, we'll demonstrate how even in this view, the operator themselves can drag the SPI and have the drone look at it. If they're trying to pinpoint on a map, they can drag that SPI on a map and the drone will follow. So the next thing I want to talk about is US operator safety. One of the things we've done at the Corona Fire Department is we actually created a TAC server that has an ADS-B feed going directly into it, and then we share that out on it's a kind of a one-way view only, but it gives us that enhanced airspace awareness. It provides real-time data on nearby manned aircraft, and it really ensures that the UAS operator is kind of always informed what's going on around them. It does give them a little bit of collision avoidance. With ADS-B, the UAS operator can make kind of proactive adjustments to the drone's flight path. We reduce that potential risk of mid-air collision. It gives us that safe integration into the national airspace. It really lets us coexist with the manned aircraft, especially when we're dealing with congested airspaces. If you've ever been on a wildland fire or a rescue operation, there's often a lot of aircraft in close proximity to your incident. It gives us improved operational planning. We talk about if you're dealing with a wildland fire incident where maybe you have water dropping aircraft, for the most part, they do follow a same approach. Like especially if they're working a specific area of the fire, they're going to kind of always come in from a heading and kind of follow that heading. And by being able to see that in real time, you know that those are areas that you need to avoid. It also gives us, there's that aspect of regulatory compliance. I think as the airspace regulations are evolving, we're seeing stuff with remote ID and whatnot. I think having ADS-B input can really help the drone operator stay compliant with their missions and guidelines. One thing we have found that when we fly under a COA or request a waiver, having ADSB monitoring and making sure that the FAA representative knows that we have live ADSB, collision avoidance, all that built into our system, it really helps them to be comfortable to grant COAs, approve waivers, and let us perform our mission. So let's talk about the direct benefits that the Corona Fire Department has seen due to this UAS and ATAK integration. I think what we can do is we can really break it down into 3 areas. First, our enhanced safety. We have enhanced our overall safety by gathering and distributing intelligence to all resources all at once. We ensure that our decisions are being made with due regard to potential hazards and the conditions all in real time. It has really streamlined our communication. By having our intelligence be available to each user's EUD, we have significantly reduced the amount of radio traffic that is being broadcast. There's no longer the aspect of like, hey, where are you? I'm at your 3 o'clock, about 400 yards. I'll wave my hand up and you can see me. Like, all of that radio traffic has now ceased. And what that does is it leaves the airspace open for more critical communications. The other thing it's done for us, it's really improved our operational efficiency. We're better able to deploy resources and adapt to change. Having a complete picture saves us from the concept of, well, figure it out when you get down there. The command staff can formulate a plan, we can direct ground resources, and more importantly, we can adapt it based on the conditions from Recon and Overwatch. So let's talk about where the future prospects are. The Corona Fire Department would like to see us, I'd like to see us get into the UGV, unmanned ground vehicle arena. I think there's a value to that, being able to put either a wheeled or tracked vehicle on the ground, especially when you talk about being able to maybe put something in a confined space or a restricted space. One of the struggles that we have is that most UGVs, it's not as simple as getting an RC car. You have to have something that has the ability to share its telemetry. It needs to know where it is, so it needs to have some sort of GPS integration, and it needs to be run off of a common language like Mavlink or something. And there are very few of those out right now, but they are starting to show up, and that's one of the areas that as the Corona Fire Department, I'd like to see us get into. The other one's going to be those fixed wing UAS. They're starting to become more prevalent out there. One of the advantages of fixed wing is essentially flight time. When you switch to a fixed wing over rotor wing, you're looking at going from that 30-minute flight time to now well over 4 hours before you have to land and change batteries. With any fixed wing aircraft, they also tend to have a bit more of payload capacity as far as payload weight, just because of the principles of lift. And with that, you've got better sensors, you've got a better EO camera, you've got a higher resolution thermal camera, you've just got more capabilities. So I would like to see us get into fixed wing, especially now that there's some that are tying into ATAK. Now let's talk about like the potential future enhancements of UAS tools. I would like to see some task automations that can be pre-built, pre-canned, and just set to run. Like, for example, like create a map. I'd like to be able to draw a box over an area and have UAS tools just set up to fly a mapping mission where it has preset overlap, preset shutter intervals, flight speeds, and it just goes and starts building those still shots for making orthophoto mosaic maps. I'd also like to see something like simple, like an Overwatch button, where I can drop a point on a map and say, okay, create Overwatch, and it's going to either create an orbit or a figure 8. It's going to essentially create a flight path to where it can get all visual aspects of that incident. The other area where I see that there needs to be improvement is on the vendor side. With a lot of UAS that we're seeing is these vendors are very much into the proprietary system, where if you want to see the mapping solution and you want to see the video sharing, you need to buy our product. And that's not what public safety is about. We need to see these vendors open up to share more of their product, and where that comes is with like SDKs. These UAS companies need to release an SDK to allow third-party integrators such as ATAK UAS tools to be able to tap into that SDK and bring that functionality and that valuable data into a resource that can share it with everyone. All right, and if you have any questions on anything that you've seen today, feel free to reach out to me. If you're thinking about setting up your own UAS program or even integrating your UAS into ATAK, please reach out. I'd be happy to share some of our history, some of the things that we've tried that works, doesn't work, all in an effort to make sure that your program is successful. And with that, thank you very much.